Well, getting ready this morning, the thought occurred to me, are young people actually getting honest science today? Or are you getting science based on somebody's viewpoint? Or are you getting science that is run through people's filter of what they believed happened or could possibly happen? See, that's what it actually is. It takes so much pressure and so much temperature to make a diamond. It doesn't take time. I looked it up in my physics. Well, it's a fundamentals of thermodynamics I had when I was at UWM. And starting on page 621, they go in making graphite to diamonds, and when you go through the math, you realize time doesn't matter. So if somebody tells you it takes so much time to make diamonds, it's really not scientifically accurate. It takes so much pressure and so much temperature. That's what science says. And then the time is whatever the time is. So you can make diamonds instantaneously, or it can take thousands or millions of years. That's science. That would be honest science. So if somebody tells you it takes so much time, you're like, no, it takes pressure and temperature. So if you believe the Earth is millions and billions of years old, and diamonds are only formed inside the Earth, then it takes so many millions of years. But if you actually believe the biblical account of Noah's flood that covered the whole Earth, and you do the math on that, then you've got 2/3 of the Earth, which is water, and it's thousands of feet deep on average, and then you have 1/3 of the Earth, which is land, which is barely over 1,000 feet average. So with a few earthquakes and stuff like that, it'd be pretty easy to make the land settle enough and cover everything, right? So if you believe the biblical account, and now this is again, it's what do you believe, so you can run your science through it. Well, see, then you can get diamonds in a few thousand years at Noah's flood, because the temperature and the pressure would have been sufficient at the bottom of the land that was covered with water to produce diamonds. That's just a quick history. You can sit and do the math. And also, you would have an account of why you have diamond fields, why you have a lot of little diamonds all in one spot. Because human beings in times of crisis and animals, they all group together, right? And if you quickly cover them, then you've got a field of diamonds. That's science with the Bible and a little bit of, well, that's how people work. That's how nature works. That's why they found all the people together after Pompeii. It's just the facts of life and honest science. And so I got to thinking about a lot of stuff really quickly. You know, how about dinosaurs, right? I got this book from Russell Friedman. They lived with dinosaurs. And it goes through the book really quick here and shows all these animals that we know lived with dinosaurs. Now, we've got the horseshoe crab, starfish, coelacanths, right? This is what I would tell my little nephews and nieces if they asked. Lungfish, sturgeons, sharks, skates, rays, cockroaches. Yeah, see, they'll survive a nuclear blast. Dragonflies. More cockroaches and ants. all sorts of marine animals, flying things, tartua, more reptiles. Actually, if you look it up on the web, there's a whole bunch of turtles, alligators. Oh, birds! Look at that! Birds! Grebes! They know they lived with dinosaurs. So they couldn't have come from dinosaurs because they lived with dinosaurs. Oh, and opossums too. There's a mammal. They lived with dinosaurs too. So what's to say that humans, because these lived with us, and they lived with dinosaurs, who's to say they didn't live with dinosaurs and us all at the same time? Human beings lived with woolly mammoths. Woolly mammoths were 10, 15 feet at the shoulder, right? And after much more science and everything, and, we get it all correct. You got T-Rex and Gigantosaurus. And it says they're only about 11 feet at the hips. So they're no bigger than an elephant or a mammoth. Or not much bigger than a modern elephant. So it's like, who lived with who? I mean, really quickly without any great big scientific research. If you believe the biblical account, then the little red panda lived with us, and it was on Noah's Ark, and it was in the Garden of Eden. The same way with the cockroach, the dragonfly, the tartua, everything you see in the book. The opossum, and they all lived with dinosaurs, because they're all in the historical record. So from a biblical point of view, you can see how dinosaurs lived with human beings. And if the biggest meat eater is only 11 feet at the shoulders, and Goliath was 9 feet, but you got to believe the Bible, And Goliath was just one of many giants, and he was considered, like 9 feet tall. Could a 9-foot guy with a spear and a sword, could a bunch of 9-foot guys with spears and swords take on a few raptors that were, only 10 feet tall? Well, yeah, probably. You might lose half of them. And then you'd have the stories of all the great knights fighting the great dragons. Well, that fits into our mythology, our history. So does it fit? Yeah, it actually does fit. If you know the science and you believe the Bible, it really doesn't take that much. It's not that far out of. It's not out of the possibility of. It's not out of possibilities. So I was like, yeah, okay, that fits. I didn't know that before. I know it now. So, and then you put a 9-foot guy on a horse that's 10 feet tall, and he's 9 feet. He's what, 19 feet tall, 18 feet tall. He's got a spear, and he's stabbing down at something that's only 11 feet tall. Well, they kill buffalo that way. So, I mean, a whole bunch of people will charge a lion or a bear. They've known that, so can a human being take on a bear? Well, actually they have, and they've survived too. The grizzly bears in modern times. Hunters have killed grizzly bears with an arrow. An archer, he just got attacked, and he's laying there, and the grizzly is gnawing on his foot, and he just grabs an arrow, stabs the bear. Bears are 9-10 feet tall, so yeah, the idea you get a few heroes to kill off a few dinosaurs, we call them now. Well, that's all within the realm of possibility. What else? What else about science do they tell us? Got this book about Louis Pasteur, how he invented vaccines. They work. They actually work. He proved they worked. In fact, without a vaccine, you would die from rabies. They have a rabies vaccine. There's only one person who is known to survive rabies without a vaccine. So do vaccines work? Oh, sure. Sure they do. They've proven they have. Although if you look through Louis Pasteur's book and everything, most vaccines were done on adults and on children, not on infants. And if you understand the concept of what a vaccine is, yeah, the whole concept of vaccine is it gives your body a little bit of enemy, basically, a little training to fight off the disease. So the problem's coming, and you get a little vaccine. That's how he did it, right? Louis Pasteur, and he proved it worked. It saved people's lives. Now, granted, he didn't fill it with all the other mercury, and if I read in here, he didn't fill it with all the other stuff that they fill it with today. And these people had different diets, and they had a lot of these people worked. So they were relatively strong, because after surviving childhood, they weren't the sedentary, watching video kind of people that we have today. And actually, the one girl that actually did survive rabies she was here in Wisconsin. She comes from, I think it was up around La Crosse or Eau Claire. She grew up on a farm. She had all these animals around her. She was athletic and healthy, and there was fresh air, and it took her a while to show her signs. But then the doctor did some things, and he also prayed, because he said he'd take a miracle too. And she survived. So do vaccines work? Yeah, sure. Do you need to give them to infants? Well, Louis Pasteur never did at the beginning, right? So it gets to be debatable of how you're applying your science. Not whether your science actually works. Because if you add extra things in there that are harmful to your body or to a young body, any medicine can hurt people. So that one's up for debate. Oh, and then I was thinking what they tell people about sex today and sexuality, because today we're in the age of pansexuality. Not to make fun of it, because actually I got this book. This is what the psychologists say. The Male, From Infancy to Adult, by Sherman J. Silver, MD. This is what the experts say. I'm reading in his book, and they say, oh no, genetically you're either X or XY. And if you look on the web, Dr. David Page, he's got a video on why sex matters. And he says, well, you're either XX or XY, or you're XX and Y, or you're Y. There's some basic things. Genetically, you're male or female, which is what Jesus said. In the beginning, he made them male, he made them female. Science doesn't disagree with that. But psychologists know that you can assign a gender to a child. They know it. This book was written in the 90s. They know it. He's got a whole chapter on establishing the sexual identity. And they know before the age of 18 months, because they've done all the testing in that. And then you can choose if you want to be later on, he said. Some people make certain choices. So you get into what is the science and what is the truth. Jesus said in the beginning he made them male and he made them female. And yet the science says that, oh no, we can stamp an identity on a little infant. And we know society has these ways of making people conform to be one thing or another. Male, female, transgender. It's just the way it is. So you get into what's honest science. And what is just human conditioning. And what you believe. I was thinking about that this morning. Because I know they lied to me when I was a child about diamonds. Or they ran it through their interpretation of how old the Earth is. So yeah, depending on your perspective, diamonds, dinosaurs, sex, even vaccines. Based on your belief system, you'll view it differently. And I was talking to my sister a while ago. She works in technology and I work in technology. So it's not just diamonds, dinosaurs, sex, and vaccines and technology. I worked at a company where started using the Raspberry Pi, the latest and the greatest in Unix-driven software. And they were telling me how great it was and how new it was. I'm a little older. I actually helped programmed on an 8080. You know, that was back before you hit a 286 or a 386 or a 486 or 586, or before you got into the Pentiums. And so they had me start programming it. And I'm just learning it, you know, it's going to be a learning curve. Boss asked me about the learning curve. And I didn't know, I really hadn't done Unix before, so I was setting it up as an operator. But I got this, got these directions to go in and reprogram some of it. That was part of it. And once I got under it, under the operator software, and started programming stuff, I realized that underneath the Unix, I could hop around with DOS commands down on the directory level. And people want to tell me how great it is. It's still a computer. Still is a central processing unit. That's still a disk drive. There's still onboard memory. All the things I learned back in the beginning. So I got to thinking about how honest is our science and how honest is our history. Yeah, it depends on what you know and what you believe. King Solomon got to writing that there's nothing new under the sun. Whatever has been will be. Whatever will be has been. Think about it, especially if you're young. Read widely, read some history.